Hi everyone. Today's story is called Pedi. It's by Souvankham Thammavongsa from Laos, and it's from this short story collection called How to Pronounce Knife, which has 12 to 15, all of pretty short stories about the Lao immigrant experience in America. And I found it interesting, but she's very new. She's also written 4 books of poetry. She was born in a refugee camp in, I want to say, Malaysia, and then she moved to Canada, where she got educated and has decided to become a poet slash short story writer. All right. That's all I know about this, so I'm not going to go into the story too much. All right, here we go. Pedi. The bright industrial lights hung in neat rows on the ceiling. Raymond was alone in the dressing room. It's how you know you lost. He knew it would come to this. They only ever talked about winning and knockouts and the way in which he didn't measure up. But in his mind, the joy of boxing was in the small details no one was there to see. He loved what it took to get here, the routine, the training, the discipline, and the build-up before the fight. The few moments after he finished wrapping up his hands and put on his gloves, his heart racing, and before he entered the ring and touched gloves. Before anything had been decided about him, when the possibility that he might win this one, just this one time, was a chance as good as any, and all he had to do was step into that opening. Even when that didn't happen, being in the ring still meant seeing a champion up close, becoming a small detail in his list of bouts. It meant he, Raymond, had been there. And it was hearing his sister's voice in his corner that he loved the most. Raymond heard the excitement of the crowd, their chanting, screaming, and jeering. But no matter how loud they got, his sister's voice always broke through. The way she would cuss out the other guy or the audience when they turned on Raymond. He came from nothing, and to stand up anyway and to try for something, well, if that wasn't courage, he wasn't sure what was. Raymond didn't know what had happened out there in the ring. A flurry of jabs and punches, and then he was out. At the time, none of that hurt. The pain came afterwards and matched the sadness he carried on in him, anchored in his body like an extra set of bones. He knew he would lose even before the fight began. Knew it for sure once he was in the ring, and he couldn't lift his arms or his head, couldn't see his opponent's face or understand what he was doing in the ring. He couldn't think out there, couldn't move his feet fast enough, couldn't move out of the way when a punch came. They landed in the middle of his face, quick, hard, sudden. He was trained to see them coming, but he just stood there like some fool waiting for them. When he played back the tapes of the fights his sister had recorded for him, he saw the punches in slow motion, how the impact rippled across his nose, his cheekbones, his hair. And when it was over, he could see nothing but black light, those little dots that peppered everything in his vision. He knew it was about time for him to be through with fighting. He had to get it out of his mind that he could ever be a champ. Truth was, he had become what they call a trial horse. He was just there for someone to punch, a body to pass through on the way to some victory belt. He said he'd quit if it ever got to be like that, and it got to be like that. This wasn't the way he wanted to leave boxing, but it was over now, and he knew it. Raymond wasn't the only person who'd ever lost the place he saw for himself in the world, but that's not how it felt to him there. He lived in a moldy, cold basement with just one window. When he first got the place, he thought he would be able to see sky once in a while, but the floor wasn't down low enough. So all he saw were shoes and boots and heels, feet. Raymond's sister did well for herself. She owned bird spa and salon. The slogan was nails, cheap, cheap. It was catchy. She wanted him to come work with her. She said he didn't have to go to school or nothing. He just had to listen to what she told him to do. It would be just like it was in the ring. She'd yell at him like he was in the corner, and he'd just go out and get it done. Instead, Raymond had gotten a job scooping out ice cream flavors at the mall. And when that shift was over, he started another one, frying bland cabbage. He hadn't seen his sister in weeks, hadn't called her or picked up the phone when she rang. But she wouldn't have that, him not calling her back. So one night she came over, worried about what he was becoming, what he was doing with his life. She was real dramatic about it. She had a key to his apartment and kicked open the door and beat him on the chest, her small fists hitting him like water droplets in the shower. She told him that even if he didn't want better for himself, she did. She brought up their dead parents. She always did that when she was desperate to make a meaningful point. She said they didn't leave Laos, a bombed out country in a war no one ever heard of, on a fucking raft made of bamboo to have you asking, you want sprinkles with that? She slapped him across the face. Raymond, what you cook at the mall? I can vomit up shit better than that. So he agreed to join her at the nail salon just to get her to calm down. Not long after that, he was answering the phones and saying, hello, Bird and Spa Salon, we do nails, cheap, cheap. At first, he mopped the floor and refilled the bottles with nail polish remover, cuticle oil, or whatever was running low. He cut paper towels into neat little squares to save everyone time. He turned on the switch to keep the waxing oil hot. When all that got to be easy for him, his sister asked him to sit in and watch whenever the girls did manicures and pedicures or wax an eyebrow or upper lip. It amazed him to see clients transformed. It was like what happened in the ring, but in reverse. They came in looking like they'd been through a few rounds, sad and exhausted, shoulders slumped, but left carefree and happy and refreshed. He thought of the injuries that happened to guys like him and what it did to lives they had outside the ring, if you could even call it that. There was the guy who didn't wake up from a fight until a year later, and the guy who never got back his confidence, stopped training, ate donuts all day, threw away his whole career. Then there was the one who died. Raymond thought of seeing only the black light and waiting for the little flickers to disappear, waiting for the bell to ring, so he knew they were into the next round. Boxing, the way he knew it, didn't do the kind of good that he saw happen every day at the salon. When one of the girls who worked at the shop suddenly quit on his sister because of a bad cough that wasn't going away, Raymond was given his own station. The first thing he did was put the plastic basket of supplies and lotions to the left of him. His sister didn't like that. What the fuck, Raymond? You're going southpaw on me now? You are right hand. All your supplies go on the right. Fuck. Maybe you should have thought of that when you were boxing. You know how fucking hard southpaws are to fight. They do everything backwards. It's too late, isn't it, to go southpaw now? Raymond didn't say anything. He just moved the basket to his right. He didn't like arguing or talking back to his sister. She'd always taken care of things, and of him. She talked tough and was for real tough, but she had a good heart. It was possible to be both. His sister had him practice on a plastic hand. Thing was, it wasn't attached to anything. It was severed at the wrist and stood straight up in the air like it was waiting to give you a high five. The plastic hand could be moved around for a better angle, to paint a heart or put on dots. His sister watched him without saying a word. When he was done, she picked up the plastic hand and waved it in his face and said, but hands come with fucking bodies. You can't be turning a client's hand 360 degrees to draw a fucking heart. And is that what this is supposed to be, Raymond? A fucking heart? Looks to me like a stinking blob of disgusting shit. She plopped the plastic hand down onto the empty station behind her, clearing Raymond's small surface area for him, and then held out her own hands. Here, she said, try on me. For someone who did manicures all the time for other people, his sister sure didn't have the best nails. They were too long and yellowed at the tips, and her skin was dry and flaky. What's your fucking face? I know what you're thinking about these nails. If I paint them, the polish remover I use on clients will just fuck them up. And I ain't going to use that gel shit on myself. It's fucking expensive. He had started to cut her nails when she added, talk to me like I'm a client. Go on. Ask me about my day, the weather, say something nice about me. Try to make conversation. Raymond tried to think of what he could say, but before he could open his mouth, his sister reassured him. Don't you worry too much about this part. Most of the time, they won't talk to you because they think you don't know how to speak English, which is fine because it's exhausting to make conversation. I don't care about their kids or husbands or boyfriends or what the fuck they're doing this weekend. If you don't want to talk to a client because you're tired and not interested, just turn to me and speak loud. They'll think we're talking about them, and that'll shut them right the fuck up. But cheap nails, Raymond thought. He had to do and remember so much. Raymond made a lot of mistakes on the job. He would forget to brush off the excess nail polish on the bottle's mouth, so the polish went on too thick. He would check too soon to see if paint was dry, pressing a finger on a client's painted nail and leaving a fingerprint. He also didn't leave enough room between the nail and the cuticle to draw out the shape of the nail. He had to start all over again each time, and what was supposed to be a 20-minute job often took him an hour. But the clients his sister gave him were patient, and they didn't say anything about the hearts he drew, even though they did appear to be, like his sister said, blobs of shit. No one complained. When they left, his sister said, "You see that? You see that, Raymond? I would have been cussed out if I did what you did. But you, it's, oh, sweetie, take your time and don't worry about it, honey. You're doing fine." Whenever his sister pretended to speak in the voice of a client, it was high-pitched and annoying, and she'd stand with one hand on her waist and float her arm around and swat at the air. He had to admit, it was fun to work with her. She always found a way to make him laugh. Over time, the work got easier. There was a pattern to the day, and he just had to follow it. His sister liked to brag that Raymond was a boxer, and the clients seemed to like that this big, burly former fighter was handling their small hands. He thought some might be uncomfortable with a man handling them this way, but his sister told him the clients thought it was wonderful to be touched by that kind of muscle so gently. Raymond was good with the endless repetition and with assessing what needed to be done. It reminded him of sparring at the gym, having to think and act quickly, anticipate what was coming, and then respond. Every client wanted something different, but there were some basic things everyone needed. He removed polish, cut nails, applied cuticle oil, and pushed skin away from the nails to give them a clean look and shape. Some nails had no shape. They came out straight and flat on the nail bed, and he had to round them with a file. He had to work the file at a 45-degree angle, deciding where the nail should begin to bend. It was very subtle, the bend. At first, he wore a mask over his nose and mouth, and he wore gloves too. But he couldn't get a proper grip, and his clients couldn't hear what he said. After a few days, he stopped wearing them, exposing himself to those tiny shards of nail dust that now entered and scratched at his lungs. There were many nail polish colors. He couldn't remember them all, so he just told his clients to pick a color once they walked through the door. Shrimp Sunday orange, funny cool purple, double personality blue, alter ego pink. The names and colors went all along and around the walls. Because it was so unusual to see a man doing nails, or simply because they enjoyed a good flirting, his clients gave him $20 or $30 tips. They told him, "Why don't you buy something nice for your little lady?" Or, "Go out and have yourself a little fun. Why don't you?" His sister, always one to notice things, said, "Fuck, I'm lucky if I get $2 or $3. It's because you're a fucking man, isn't it? Even in a business I own myself and built up myself, men are still being paid more. And these are women who are doing this. They should know better." And she'd look on angrily while he counted his tips, which often added up to more than what his sister charged for mani-pedis. If there was one thing that Raymond didn't like about the job, it was toes. After only a few weeks of working on them, he got warts on his hands. His sister said, "Gross, I ain't gonna let anyone see that nasty shit while you're working on them. You better take time off. Plus, it might be contagious." "I don't fucking know. I told you to wear gloves." He picked at a wart on his hand and winced. His sister said, "You ain't gonna quit on me now because of this, are you? You know people come in just to see you. Never seen anything like that." But it wasn't the warts he was worried about. Warts were nothing compared to how bad things could get in boxing, with the bad headaches and black lights and mumbling nonsense or being dead. Warts went away eventually. That didn't bother him. It was the smell of feet. It got into the pores of his nostrils and took root there, like a follicle of hair. It was becoming a part of him, the smell, like spoiled milk. He could never forget what he did for a living because it was always there. He was beginning to taste the smell of feet at the back of his throat. Soon he stopped enjoying food altogether, which made him lose weight. But his sister said this was a good thing since it meant more clients coming in to see him. She bought him tight-fitting black t-shirts and insisted he wear them at the shop. His muscles bulged out from the sleeves and the neck, the fabric clinging to him like an overstuffed sausage casing. His sister said, "Work it, Raymond. You don't need to be shy about what you got. Tighten it up, flex. We need that for the shop. It can't just be about the nails. Anyone around here can do that." Raymond was sure the warts did not come from his female clients. Most women took care of themselves. Their toes were clean and groomed to begin with, after years of salon and spa visits. He blamed the men. It was the men who had never had a pedicure their whole lives and who wore heavy socks and leather boots all year round. The men who had been too embarrassed to show their untreated toes to a female pedicurist. Now that there was a man working at the salon, they came to him. As a man, Raymond knew not to mention or acknowledge the mess, the years of neglect just because the feet had been out of sight. The layers of skin he had to slow off, like cutting a pat of butter. His sister would say, "You know why the skin there is yellow? Well, the fucking guy pees in the shower. That's why. Disgusting fucker." Still, Raymond didn't spend much time focusing on that part of the job. Raymond had a favorite client, Miss Emily. He didn't have much to do when she came in. Her cuticles were already peeled back and her nail bed was long and thin and smooth. The skin on her hands and feet felt like a baby's, plump and soft. She would always do him the courtesy of removing her nail polish before she came in, so he could start right away on filing and paraffin wax, and then lay down the 3 layers of polish. The first layer was to protect the nail from the polish. The second layer was the polish color itself, and the last layer was to help protect the polish from chipping and to keep it shiny. At the start of each shift, Raymond would check the appointment log at the front desk, running his finger down all the names. When he saw that Miss Emily would be coming in, he would take a deep breath, as if some wonderful event was about to happen. He'd spend extra time polishing his tools and fluffing the chair's pillow. He even went out to buy a few red roses to put in a vase at his station. And after Miss Emily left, he couldn't stop smiling and asking the girl at the front desk when Miss Emily might come back to see him again. One day, his sister said, "What? You think you got a chance with that Miss Emily there? She's rich and educated. None of the things we are or are ever going to be. Don't you be dreaming big now, little brother. Keep your dreams small, the size of a grain of rice, and cook that shit up and swallow it every night and shit that fucking thing out in the morning. It ain't ever going to happen. If there's something I know in this life, it's rich woman, and that woman ain't for you." But even when his sister talked him down like that, Raymond just kept daydreaming about Miss Emily. When she didn't come in, he painted and shaped all his clients' nails like Miss Emily's. Anyone could be her. Then one afternoon, while he was sweeping the floor by the glass door, he looked up and saw Miss Emily with a man. Raymond watched the two of them, standing close together, touching hands. He hadn't seen anyone with her before. The man wore a 3-piece suit and expensive shoes. The black leather had a polished shine to it, and where his toes bent, there wasn't a crease. Raymond put the broom away and sat down at his station to prepare. When Miss Emily came in and took the seat, the smell of this man's cologne came in with her. It was not one of those drugstore scents. Raymond knew about those. He had tried them all. Although Raymond held Miss Emily's hand over his small workstation, he felt a wide space between them. Her smile was just polite and nothing more. His sister had been watching him, and she saw his face fall, the way it would fall in the ring when he knew he was losing. Later, Raymond's sister drove him home. It was their routine, and the one moment of the day when they could be brother and sister, a family again. Raymond didn't get out of the car right away. He didn't want to go into his apartment just yet. The sun was out, and he wanted to feel it on his face. As they sat in the car outside his apartment, his sister lit up a cigarette and smoked with the windows rolled down. She shook her head. "Raymond, didn't I tell you, you've got to not have dreams? That woman ain't ever gonna love a man who does nails. That's not real life. You and me here, we live in the real world. You're given a place and you just do your best. Fucking give it up. I hate when you get like this. Plenty of girls for you. They want to get with you all the time, but you don't let yourself see it. Like the girls at the shop, they're all wet for you." Those girls were married or serious with someone. What his sister didn't know was what they talked about behind her back when she went out for a smoke or to go get supplies. How they tried to get pregnant, but no babies ever caught on because of the chemicals from the salon. How their coughs started and didn't ever stop. How they wanted to quit, but had nowhere else to go. Raymond didn't like to talk back to his sister, but this time he thought she was wrong to say what she did. "Well," he said, "you know, maybe Miss Emily ain't ever going to be with a man like me, but I want to dream it anyway. It's a nice feeling, and I ain't had one of those things to myself in a long time. I know I don't got a chance in hell, but it's something to get me through." It's to get through the next hour, the next day. Don't you go reminding me what dreams a man like me ought to have. That I can dream at all means something to me. Raymond's sister didn't say anything. She just stared right ahead beyond the steering wheel. He knew his face resembled hers, but damaged. A dented nose, the left eyebrow split and made crooked by a scar. Although her face was treated to facials and creams and anti-wrinkle serums and was smooth and glowing, Raymond could tell she felt the way his face looked, beaten and busted. She didn't want to recognize that face and see it hoping. Hope was a terrible thing for her. It meant it wasn't there for you, whatever it was you were hoping for. After a moment, she went back to her cigarette. Every puff was a small grey cloud that disappeared like the dreams she was always telling him to keep small. Raymond dropped his head and gazed down at his palms, but the warts that put him out of work for a few more weeks were coming in again. They sat there in silence, in the oncoming darkness, the car window still open. They could hear a family in their backyard somewhere nearby, the sizzle on the barbecue and the giggling, young and fragile and innocent. It was the kind of giggling they themselves did as kids. Now that kind of giggle seemed foolish for them to do. It was like a far distant thing, a thing that happened only to other people. All they could do now was to be close to it and remain out of sight. Yes. Hi, Charles, Kinjal, Alka, thanks for joining. So, impressions, unimpressions. Sumit?
The last dialogue is the only time he talks, right?
I think so, yeah, when he says,
so, yeah.
when he talks to her, yeah. Otherwise, the only person who's talking is his sister,
His
right?
sister, yeah. Like he got in the last word or something.
Yeah.
There's some hope to cling by. It's nice.
No, I don't know if there's hope, but it's not even about, I don't think it's about, there may be hope, but it's about believing that there's hope, right? That's the...
Yeah. It's the Of Mice and Men house again, all over again.
Something like that. Yeah, sure. The rabbits, yeah. Miss Emily is the rabbit.
Yeah. I liked it. I liked the details. It shows that the person who wrote this, the author, somewhere or the other might have lived through it, through the experience.
Yeah, I think she was born in a refugee camp. I think she had a smoother entry to the Western world, but she must have known a lot of people who had this. Yeah. So there's some other worlds where there's another story where she talks about the girl and her mother going across the river or like in a basket of sorts, and the girl's father is the one pushing the basket along, and he drowns, and that felt real too. So I don't know. I don't know if it happened to her. It's just she probably has a lot of input for that kind of experience. I know little to nothing about Laos. I mean, what kind of regime it has, or the history of the country. It's like so insignificant in the world picture to us. But that's why I kind of wanted to go with this story. You know,
even American nail salons, I thought were mostly Chinese or Taiwanese.
Koreans, I think. Koreans also.
Koreans,
so, yeah. But Laos also, I think, of the same ethnicity, basically. Yeah. So that sister character is so well drawn, because I know people, I've met people not like that, kind of like that. I mean, I've been friends to salons. That's how they are, you know, they're business-like. When they speak, they like to curse, and, you know, it's kind of, there's a bit of hardness to them. They will never allow themselves to get soft because they feel that they have to keep getting ahead, and, you know, they're like these very driven business. Yeah, go ahead.
The link we received has a slightly different wording every now and then. It's the same story, but the words, some sentences, somewhere the phrases are different. Is there two different versions we have circulated?
I don't think so. I think it's a different word. I think it's the same text, isn't it?
Oh, okay. No huge difference, but
yeah, in the beginning there are some parts missing, and then at the end there's some parts, some words
So-
during the reading, but then at the back, when you were talking about the kind of giggling they themselves did as kids, young, fragile, and innocent, that's not in there.
I-
We've got some
Yeah,
text.
that's not in.
Yeah, we've
I
got
just
some.
wonder whether anybody else had noticed that. I mean, I don't want to distract from the discussion.
Yes. I mean, the version that we read is a little abridged. And the version that Shankar read right now is more.
From the collection, right?
Yes, more
Yeah,
in
I think
detail.
mine is
And
from the book, and the one that I shared was from a magazine, so they might have edited it a little bit for content or something like that.
Is it a translation from another language? Is it
No, it's English. It's in English.
It's written in English originally.
Yeah.
Then I find it difficult to understand why the two different versions exist at all.
Because the magazine
One
has some
might
sort of
have-
constraints.
No,
Magazine
one might have been
page
published earlier.
constraints.
It might have been published earlier in the magazine, and then it got picked up, and then the author must have.
Yeah,
done
they
it
all did. I think
differently.
I think almost all the stories were published in different magazines, and then they were kind of once
Okay.
you had 12 or 15 or whatever, they put them together in the book. But yeah, I'm sorry about that. I should have shared this, but I didn't find it when I shared that. I only found this later. So.
The length of the story gives you a much more emotional impact. So when we read this, because of the F-bombs, and it really bangs you in the face emotionally.
It does.
Very deep, angry,
Mhm.
almost desperate, fight for survival kind of story in an unwelcome, to a certain extent, unwelcome host country, you could say, since they seem to be refugees. When you read the version, that the link you sent us, it really the power of the story, emotionally gripping story that's there, it really hits you. You have to. I recommend you read it if you haven't read this, because it makes it shorter and it's much more powerful. Actually.
Oh, you think? Oh, that the magazine edition is better. Sure.
Yes.
No, I will read that.
Not better, but it's a more concise, emotionally powerful story, I feel, even though parts were missing. Gets you, you can feel the anger, you can feel the desperation, and the struggle to live is coming right through this version in particular. But I don't know, you should read it.
I will. Right.
I was kind of torn between the interpretation just now, what Helen said, yes. But I was also attracted to another major major theme in it was the relationship between this the sister and the brother. And that's kind of reminded me of George and Lenny from Mice and Men.
Oh my God.
Oh, gosh.
I don't think she's doing him any favors that way. He's her brother, but she doesn't have to be warned around. There's genuine affection. Like
She's
don't
not
think
showing
there's
him
any
any
question about
dream,
that.
right? Like,
yeah, she doesn't want him to have any pipe dream. Basically, when he was a boxer, she was happy to support that. But once he stopped doing that, she's like, don't waste your life making ice cream. And somehow, at least
Then
being part of this nail business can be a better step to some sort of success.
But when she's talking to him, she's so nasty almost. If I was her brother, I would have trouble with her.
No, when that's a sister, yeah. That, I mean, if you can't talk like that to your brother, then who can you talk to like that?
I guess maybe, I don't know. I just thought that was my main comment. Yes,
Anybody else, Sharada? Okay, let's park the difference between the version I sent and this today. I think we'll just work on the version that was sent and we'll discuss that. That's fine.
So for me, I found it so dramatic that, a boxer is taking care of nails, and how sissy is that? I mean, it's like, I can't imagine how much of emotional trial a guy goes through when he's, a boxer is fighting, and now he has to take care of nails, and oh yes, there's a little chip over here, let me fix it for you. It just is, the contrast is way too big for me to even comprehend. Like, I associate boxers with people who are bleeding and, you know, boxing and bleeding and and fighting for no reason and have no logic for fighting, but they're fighting because they're angry and they have that suppressed anger and it's coming out as boxing. I mean, there has to be some reason
No.
why
Boxers. That's not correct. Boxers don't fight for no reason. They fight because it's their job. And they're not, it's not like they meet people and they just punch them and that gets televised worldwide. Right? They are professional boxers, just like they are professional athletes and runners and swimmers and tennis players. So they have a skill, they train, they get into perfect weight shape, perfect height. They practice their speeds, they make sure they're very flexible. They get into a ring and it's kind of controlled environment. But I can understand the difference between the machismo of being a boxer and then having to do nails. But it's also, if you look at it from a different way, his boxing career is tanking. He's on the downward slope, and here he's on a slope where he might be able to make something like, you know, save enough money, you know, have a reasonable life. So that's the trade-off you have to make. So
yeah, I have no doubt that a boxer trains, but I presume that they invoke anger into the boxer to make the boxer be able to box that.
not always. Not. I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of psychological. What they say in cricket, sledging or whatever, they trash talk each other, but it doesn't have to be real. They just kind of get themselves with the same. Right. But that's not just boxers, even other athletes do that, even footballers. They have these war chants, and New Zealand rugby team, they have this whole Maori chant, which they get into that mental state.
And
but there is a contrast there,
care about their looks. I mean, the last thing, I mean, how pretty they look, they definitely are not going to be worried about that. They might want to look more ferocious to make the crowd at least like them because they look ferocious, if nothing else.
But Raymond never cares about how pretty he looks, right?
Right, but I presume that's what boxers do. They're a bit of an actor also. I mean, they have to be called for the competitions. They have to be invited to those competitions if they don't look ferocious. And here instead, the tiniest of things, a nail, I mean, putting nail polish or a chipped nail, a tiny little thing. The contrast is great.
This is interesting.
You know what I liked about the story was, it started, right in the beginning, it told us, the author told us, the story is about hopelessness. Because the way the sadness came on him, the way he lost the battle. And then it started building towards having some hope. And again, it came to the same end, that there isn't much hope for people like us. That all we can do is watch from the distance and see other people enjoying. So that is the graph of the story, which I liked. And as far as like she's saying boxers are, what she means is they look violent and this work is not for violent people. That I absolutely agree. And that is the whole idea of the story, that well, for survival you can literally move from one end, you have to move in 180 degrees just to keep yourself alive. And that is what this young man has done here. And he says at one place, he says, if this, I could stand up again after losing the fight. And if this is not courage, then he didn't know what courage is. Those lines are there. So
right at the beginning, I think we talked about boxing.
Yeah, that's been put up. And in between, he keeps comparing doing nails and boxing. How did they compare with each other? So though it doesn't compare anywhere, but for him, it was the same, because both the things he did for survival, for earning some money.
But those are the only skills he knows, so he has to bring whatever he learns to whatever he does. So if he's learned to be disciplined and work harder, he puts that first thing in. Yeah. I liked how she gets upset that he's getting more tips than her. She says, this is a man coming into this job. This is a business I started, and this guy is getting $30 and I'm getting $3, and they're not even complaining that he can't do hearts probably, which is kind of a nice a different take on how women get shafted out of opportunity by men in some way. You put a man in that place, he ends up doing better than a woman, even though he's not doing a better job, he's getting more money. So how do you measure that success, right? So that's also good. Charla, what did you think of the story?
I really enjoyed it. Like when I read it yesterday, I loved it. I'm not sure what I loved about it, so I'll have to. Sorry. When you read it aloud, Shankar, that I noticed like it's called bird something spa, right?
Huh?
It's called bird nails and spa, I think.
Yeah, birds, nails, and
bird
salon.
nails. Yeah,
That's why the cheap.
cheap.
Cheap, but cheap is also what birds say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you read it is when I got it. And that when I read it myself, I didn't. So this is the thing of reading aloud, I guess. Like, oh gosh, it sounded so good. So that sort of links up to that whole thing of dreams and hope and all that for me. Like the thing of, because birds are about
Escape and flying in the sky with dreams.
not just that. I think like it's a message. It's a thing of hope. Like it's a winged messenger, you could call it. So yeah. So in that way, it kind of suggested that he was coming from the darkness or the depths of his boxing life into this new life where there would be some hope at some point. And for me, like one thing, like the thing where he says that just having the capacity or the thing to dream is enough, really. I mean, that was so good, I thought.
Yeah, it's so little to ask for, right? And she's worried. She's worried that by doing that, he will lose control.
The two faces saying they're so similar, but his face is like beaten up and bruised and all, whereas her face is still waxed and okay, it's not waxed, but whatever, you know, it's got all the.
But that's a nice line. He said that she felt the way he looked, right? So she
felt the way he looked. But then I thought in some way there was more hope and dreams and life in him than in her. Because she's more of a realist, I would say, and he's probably still. Yeah. So that was really nice, like the contrast of the whole whatever of the two characters. Only the last bit I was the very last line really, because it said they're sitting there listening to that family and the innocence. I don't know what that meant really, but yeah, they're having a barbecue and all the sounds coming from that, and they had been like giggling when they were kids, but now they are outside it and close to it, but out of sight. I don't know, that part was a little.
All these people from Laos, they came to America. A lot of them came as refugees, whatever. And it's not just can be Canada also, to the West, and they had respectable positions in their countries, which they lost, and they came here. They had kind of becoming jobbing people, you know, businesses, laundries, nail salons, anything to get by. But they were not automatically they were not at the level they were back home, and they were not. And the people here at that level, like doctors, lawyers, they had nice houses with backyards, and barbecues, and so they were, because they had to struggle just to get to some kind of balance in life. They could not allow themselves to dream of those things anymore. So the giggle, it stands in for what that represented, that kind of not worrying about it, having financial security, having some level of some modicum of luxury in your life. And so now they're out of it. They're kind of scrapping their way up the ladder. I don't know if it's up the ladder. They're scrapping their way to get by in life. So yeah, I thought that was a very good way to end the story. It's very well done.
Yeah. I really like that one thing too, where like women really liking the gentle, muscular thing. Okay.
Yeah, that a big muscular.
I mean,
boxer was doing this. That was a good point, because that is something people would like. Oh wow, look at him! He's so big and he's not using it. Like someone being powerful and showing gentleness.
He's using it in a very gentle, caring way. And in some way, like when I thought I came across that man with Mr. Emily, perhaps it was with Miss Emily. Sorry, perhaps it was there in the other version. I don't know. That man came across as not a nice person. So it was like, was he like that, Helen? I don't know.
In the story?
Yeah.
Oh, in the link I sent you. Really? Wow. I really have to read this one.
There was something about the smell which, and how she had changed because of that. That's what I got anyway.
No, this is what it says.
You read the version that came on the link, the web link?
So it says, one day Miss Emily was seen at the door of the store with a distinguished man. He wore a three-piece suit and had polished black shoes. And despite the smell of feet, Raymond could smell the man's cologne. It was not one of those drugstore scents. Raymond would know about them. He had tried them all. Miss Emily stood at the doorway with this man, and in his smell, she disappeared as if a dark cloud moved in and covered up all that was bright and good about her when she was gone.
Yes, that was
Very
it.
different. Yeah.
That was it. Like, so it was like, although that man was like rich and powerful and he had her in some way, distinguished man, in some way there was a darkness he was casting which was shadowing her light.
No, I think you're reading too much. Maybe you. I don't.
No, Shankar, I don't. Okay, at least I didn't feel I was being. That was so clear, right? It was. That's what he says right there.
Yeah, I agree with Sharda. I think that the dark cloud moving in that Raymond sort of witnessed or sensed, it says it covered up all that was bright and good about her when she was alone. So he seemed to have some kind of a dark or a negative effect on it's Miss Emily, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I think it was the fact that he had the smell of rich cologne, which is exactly the opposite of what Raymond. So that underlined to him that she was different from him. But yeah, dark cloud definitely doesn't have positive connotations.
That other thing about the person being who is so muscular and but using that muscle in some way for the good. And when I came across this felt like the opposite to me.
Yeah, I think you're right. There is some negative connotation to the words dark cloud.
And why mention the smell of the cologne? He had tried them all and it was not from drugstore. So what is it in that particular?
It means that the colognes he tried would have been the cheap ones at the drugstore.
But this one,
I had a different, much a better quality, wealthier, and a better quality. That's what it means. So let's go through. There's some people who haven't spoken yet. Arun, what was your take on the story?
Well, this is just a second. Well, I enjoyed the story. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. There are few pieces of information that are extraordinary. I personally didn't know much about what happens in that kind of salon. I've never been there. But I feel that this is one of those lesser stories. When I read that, I almost can. I feel that I can read the writer to what she's doing or why she had used those scenes or the lines or the metaphors. The metaphors are, feels not very natural. So this is one of those stories that even I would dare to say that I might like to edit it a little bit. Yes.
Do you have anything else to say? Is that it?
That's it. That's it. I do not have much else to add. Oh, yeah.
Sheetal, what about you?
I thought it's a good story. It's a story on hope and how he's serving ice cream at the mall and his sister says, no, you can do better than this, and how his sister helps him get a job, helps him to work at the spa with and teaches him everything. So it's a story on hope, and they're hoping to even he's getting tips and all, and he gets more tips, and it's how he dreams about Miss Emily. At least he can dream about her, which is more than what someone in his position can ask for. So it's again hope. He's hoping that, at least there's some hope for him. There's a dream about her. So I thought it was a good story.
All right, thanks. Very well said. Charles, I know you joined a bit late, but I'm hoping you read the story. Charles, are you there? Right. Kinjal, I know you got disconnected once or twice, but I'm not sure.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so I kind of agree with Arun that this is not a great story, but I'm glad you bought it because we've never moved our gaze to the Eastern Hemisphere in a very particular way. And so the story is a mirror, I think, to Laos itself. The emasculation that the protagonist sees is exactly what is happening to that country. So in that sense, I like that you picked this story, but yeah, it was good. It was a good read, and I enjoyed it that we are doing it here today. But like Arun said, it's not a great story. It's not a story that I will go back to again and again. But there were some phrases that I liked where he says that his face looked like hers, but beaten and beaten up. Or, you know, Raymond's face beaten and busted. So there's a visceral quality to this story, which I think was the intention of the writer, and he's just done that. And that's it. And plus, after I finished reading the story, I saw that it was shortlisted for the Commonwealth Short Story Prize, and I was a little disillusioned because, yeah, those are the kind of stories that are often picked up for these prizes. So in that sense, it makes sense.
Yeah, that's not why I picked it up. But yeah, I also didn't think it was a great. I liked parts of it, and I was kind of intrigued by it. But I thought we should. Like I said, I did want to bring something in from a part of the world that maybe I didn't know anything about. And I've read now, I think, 8 of her stories in that book, and they're all. I don't want to say they're not great stories, but there's something interesting in what she does, and I'm just trying to work my way through. There are some stories that are slightly longer, which would have been probably too long to read on this book. But it's way into that culture or some sorts, and also the immigrant experience of the West.
Yes, I mean, Laos is not a country which is often in news. And
nobody knows anything about it almost.
Yeah, right? And I think it has a very strict communist regime, and it's very, very stifled. It has a very stifled atmosphere. So I'm glad we read a story from there.
I think all that helped in her getting the story published in the first place, to be honest. Just we talk about how the liberals and the West is. I'm sure that angle helped the book get published.
Yeah, there's a political context to the story.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of broadening the worldview and making us learn more about the country. So that is there,
Yeah, so that's just, thank you. Thank you, Shankar.
Alka, you joined halfway through, I think. I'm not sure if you read the whole story, but I'm glad to see you here after a long time.
Shankar, no, I mean, I read the story. I joined a little late, but it's what remained with me, somehow that window. Because, you
you can only see feet and not the sun.
He's in the apartment. When he's in the apartment, the window gives him only the glimpse of feet and heels.
Not the sky.
And then not the sky, not the sun. And later, really in his life, I felt was another window. It was another window that, that was, there was hope, there was something in it. And when it's, when he sees her with another man, the dark cloud is, his world gets clouded. His world again gets clouded because, what he hoped, of course, hope, it was the faintest hope, but what he had. And then he wants to keep it because she says, dream small, like a grain of rice or smaller, so that you don't get hurt. As a sister, she wants to protect him. She knows right from the beginning there is no hope. But somehow that's why that window part remained with me. That window and this window in his life that, and that's why he says, I want to, even if I know there is no hope, I still want to keep thinking about it, because again, it's a window. It's just a window. So, you feel that something brighter you can see outside, though it's not a part of your world. Because in the end, they say that giggling They hear that family giggling, and it's very sad, but and they feel that it happens to other people.
Yeah.
For us,
That
even
is-
and this is also not for us. It is meant for other people. So very sad indeed. And yes, as Kinjal said, it is visceral. I could feel that, the nail dust going into his lungs. I mean, doing something which you are not meant to do, or you're not cut out to do, is by itself is so sad. And another thing which I felt was, that as a boxer, when he quits, so he didn't quit it when he was at the top, and nobody does. That's the saddest part. And when you are at the apex, you don't quit because you're doing very well. And then when the slide starts, one doesn't know when to stop.
I don't think he ever had a peak as a boxer. I think he tried, and then it got worse and worse. Yeah, but
he has written that how his opponents were. He's written that part, that one opponent who couldn't, who gave up or won this thing. I thought they were the opponents.
Was it opponents or boxers? I don't think.
Or only boxers. I thought it was.
I'm not sure it was a response to him fighting them. I'm not sure. I could be wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, go on.
Maybe he was not at his peak, but when he had to quit, he said that's not the way one quits. When one is down, that's not the way to quit. When one is down, one should quit at the top. But then there's no choice,
But you have to quit when you have to quit.
And then the whole thing is about having no choice. The hopelessness is about having no choice. That's the hopelessness of this. That's my take.
So he just said he thought of injuries that happened to guys like him, what it did to the life they had outside. I don't think it's necessarily his opponents.
Okay.
It's just other boxers, yeah. I'm not saying, I don't think he was that successful. Just something in the story tells me that he probably wasn't a very successful boxer. But even if, whether you're successful or not, the fact that you quit when you have to quit, it makes it harder, right? I really like that. I like that fact that failure makes you make choice. Failure removes any choices for you, and then you can maybe delude yourself into saying that this is the right time to do the choice, but you don't really have. Actually, you don't have any choice there. You're just kind of going with where life guides you to, stay above the water or on some dry land or something like that. For sure. Yeah. Thanks. Thank you. Snehal, were you able to read the story? Because you also joined.
Yeah, I read part of it, but I'll read the rest of it later. I just had a long day. I just got back from the hospital. I'm just listening to all the opinions, and then I'll read the story.
Actually, you should be doing it the other way around, but that's fine. Read the story first, but that's okay. Anyway, that's fine. Take care. Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
Everybody's spoken, I think. So, yeah, I think everyone's more or less on the same page. Not a great story per se, underwhelming in parts in some places where you can see the actual construction, but it does have little points of quality which kind of intrigues me. I would rather read, I'd love to read great stories all the time, but I also like to read stories that are just interesting or maybe show you something you don't know about the world in some part of the world. And I'm not saying I'm going to sit and read a book about Laos or whatever, but just maybe some window into the immigrant experience that isn't covered so much. Yeah, and I think the writer's probably got some benefit from that uniqueness of her position. Just like how that Vietnamese writer gets from his books, right? Something like that. So yeah.
Sometimes doesn't make for good stories. And I tend to feel that this story is a slice of real life. From my own perspective, I feel like, the author, Souvankham, has actually, if she's been in refugee camps and she's known, or she's heard or talked to people who've had experiences, and then as refugees living in another country, a host country, it's so familiar, because we know even today there are refugees who are struggling in North America and the US, to become residents there. But to me, it just looks like it read like a slice of reality. It was so troubling because we have a refugee situation in the world, all over the world, actually.
Everywhere, yeah.
Everywhere today, not just because of global warming, but war and so on. And I just felt it, like I said, you know, real life does not always make for a good story. So maybe one of the problems with this particular story is it is a slice of real life. These are how
Correct. Yeah.
live.
Yeah, there is a difference, right? It can be as authentic as you want it to be, but that does not necessarily mean that it's going to be a good story. There's definitely that factor involved. Yeah, I don't know how long she was in the camp, but she eventually got to Canada, and I think that was probably a better thing for her. Yeah. I agree with you.
Reminds me of a story that is also with the Commonwealth short story, was in Commonwealth short story competition. It is also a little bit about boxing. It is also a refugee experience. And luckily I found a story. I'm going to put the link here. Fatah versus dictator.
And like I said, this link that you sent, Shankar, actually there are a few important points that are missing in your version that are different. Like, for example, the one about the box.
It's not my version, it's the book and the story. Yeah, but okay.
Yeah, but in our version, it talks about these men, these other boxers that he hurt. He caused the damage to them. I don't know if that's in the version that you.
There are minor changes, minor variations between the two.
I am not even sure they're all minor, to be honest with you.
Actually, it changes the tone of the reading. I can't find it now, but it did say that this was something he had caused. He caused in the ring when he was younger and just starting out. These were some of the injuries, and then it went on to talk about the guy who didn't wake up a year later. But I think in your version, is that different?
It doesn't even have that line, I think, in the book.
It's in the one that the link you sent us. Sort of
it says, it says he thought of the injuries that happened to guys like him. It doesn't say he caused.
Yeah, in this version, it says he caused in the ring when he was young. Yeah. So there are little things like that that tend to change the tone of the story.
Actually, I don't even think they're that little, though. They're quite significant, some of them.
Yeah, I was a bit confused when you read that, because in the version I read, he caused the injuries to the guy.
Yeah, it is quite different. I apologize for the discrepancy between the book and the story.
Might have edited the story and it was included in the book. So
there's no might. It definitely has edited. There's no way it just slipped in. But the stories have been reworked, and some of these are big. So what Helen said is the big point, right? There's a huge difference between causing. So Alka, you're right. That's what the impression
that's what, because I read his version first, so that's why I was under the impression that he caused those injuries, and then
he did. If you read it from the magazine, he caused it. I'll make sure this doesn't happen again. Yeah, this discrepancy, which is really annoying me that I didn't catch it. But
and was it relevant that Raymond was initially suspected of being left-handed? Because his sister forced him to move his tray to the right side, and she called him a southpaw. Is that relevant to the story? I'm not. Did I miss something?
Helen,
I thought
yes, Shankar, okay. No, what I felt, that he kept it because, see, as boxers, they use both the hands. Right, but she says, you are not a southpaw. You know that you should keep it on the right. And he doesn't say anything. He shifts it to the right. But obviously, he's comfortable with left as well. They have to be strong with both the hands.
Yeah, but I don't think he was a southpaw. I just think he thought it was easier for him to keep the nail polish things on the left. I don't think those require any sort of great strength. So he was kind of being. So she has kind of a set system, and she said, "Don't do this now," and I know better. And then she reminds him that, don't you remember how bad it was when you face southpaws in the ring? They're tougher to handle. Don't start going southpaw now.
He mentions it's too late, isn't it? What did she mean by that? I don't get it.
I might like to interject here. Generally, I mean, as far as I understand boxing, the defense comes from the right hand with the right hander, and the real punch comes from the left hand. So that is the way it happens. And when someone becomes southpaw, then the whole thing changes. So he attacks with right hand and defends with left. So that is what happens. So generally what happens, it is not only in boxing, it is with badminton, tennis, table tennis, anywhere. So if I'm right-handed, the person is left-handed, because I'm used to right-handed players, it becomes very difficult. So because I am used to facing right-handed boxers, when a southpaw comes, so it becomes very difficult to defend. You do not know from where the punch, the next attack is going to come, because his style is very different. And some people try to change very unsuccessfully. So at the end of the career, a boxer will not be able to change his attacking and defensive style. So that is what the sister saying. And probably that hints at something, and I would like to speculate here, that probably he didn't have real coaches, real trainers. He didn't have that infrastructure around him. Because if the sister is not going only as fan, but also directing him in the boxing ring, then it is a very sad state for a boxer. So probably there is a hint that sister is almost, when sister says that come to my salon, and it is going to be exactly the same. I'm going to direct you and you just go to perform. That means probably as a very young person, he was thinking about, and it is every boxer's dream to have the title, the title belt, right? And so thousands and thousands of boxers start like that. And generally they do not go up, only few go up and really fight at the top level. And rest of them, they become kind of those boxers who fight the champion on the way to the championship. So if you follow anybody, Mike Tyson or anybody, Muhammad Ali or anybody, they are fighting a lot of unimportant boxers to have that champion shot later. So he becomes that kind of a person, simply because that he has not really grown as fast as possible. And I'm speculating that probably he didn't have really many people around him to help him and support him and train him.
Resources, everything, right? It's one thing to have some nascent talent. You also need a structure in place. And
you know about sports. First paragraph says he was a trial horse. So
But he became a trial horse, which is when he said, not a punching bag, but like Arun said, you have to go through these steps. So one of the earlier steps that they have to go through to get to.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification, Arun.
I think all sports have a dominant hand and a kind of a non-dominant hand, right? Tennis, everything. So that's what it is.
Yeah. To me, it is that discussion. The sister says, are you a southpaw? But now anyway, it is late. So it's there in their heads that he's been a failure in boxing. And she's also thinking about it. Not only he, but she also is remembering all those things. And now it is too late. So
that probably the dynamics is a little different. What really happened with him, the brother? The brother is a straightforward, in the face fighting kind of a person with a very straightforward result, win or loss. And where the sister, she's married, got 4 children, has a husband who doesn't do anything. So she must be internally very frustrated and disappointed. On the other hand, she also runs a salon. The salon has a couple of...
Apparently okay, yeah.
Which is doing better. And there are a couple of employees, female employees, who actually are not really, like the owner. So she manages it day after day. So anyone in our group who is a little bit of even runs a small shop will know how frustrating and how horrible that is. So that person, that owner, of course, acquires a controlling habit, controlling nature. What is going to happen on my floor is in my control. So when brother comes with his own training experience, probably because they also use bucket, right? In the boxing ring, they use bucket too. I do not know which side they keep it. I don't remember it. So he kept it on the left hand side. Probably he's used to that, but sister is not okay with it. And the dynamic of brother and sister is such that the sister generally dictates and brother obeys, and that's the way it is. So sister imposes her will on the brother to, make him comply.
Does it say that his sister has 4 kids and a husband?
Yeah, it does. In the beginning, it does. Her husband.
The version I read,
Her husband could remain unemployed because she could support him.
Oh
in the beginning, it is there. In the link which you sent, no? In that.
Sure. My God, this whole paragraph is there in the story of it. So she's added stuff. She's removed stuff too. Huh.
I have a following comment.
It's not even mentioned in the collection, the husband and the 4 kids. I was thinking Arun is being very imaginative, creating a husband and 4 kids and all that stuff. It's all written there.
We also read it actually in our version.
Yeah, I'm very upset with myself, the story, by the way. I apologize.
It doesn't matter.
Unemployed husband and 4 children.
No, it does. Yeah. You're being very kind, but I shouldn't have screwed up with this.
I have a comment that is very spontaneous. As we're discussing, I am changing my mind about some comments we had that it's not a great write. I have to say that, like, the key thought is beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I strongly believe that. To the extent that that statement is valid, the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So I think the beauty of this story is in the discussion of it. And more we listen, more I listen to the discussions, and I am beginning to feel that this is one of those kinds of writing styles where it reads, like Helen said, it is too realistic, and therefore doesn't smell and sound like a prize winning. But more you think about various little things, then you begin to extract the gems out of it. And so I'm finding it much more interesting now. So again, this is compliments to Pune Writers Group. It's much more interesting now than I thought of it initially, which only Helen knew at the time.
And to yourself too, because you are also the part of the Pune Writers Group. So.
Thank you. But no, but it goes against sort of, at least I'm not trying to be devil's advocate. I really feel that with that more you share and talk, and the whole activity of discussing with others and listening to others is really critical, very, very important component of appreciating the literature, which often is undervalued. And it's almost like, I don't know where this is, but I hope the whole story is about the contrast between Raymond, his name is Raymond and his sister. Like I think it was Manjari's comments that inspired me to say this, that Raymond is kind of a less hopeful person and just going along with life, not fighting. Although he is the fighter, which is another very contrasting thing. He is a boxer and fighter. But in life, he is not a real fighter, and his sister is, as we just heard everything about her, and that's what makes this is a great contrast as well as similarity.
I will try to just interject a little bit here. Is that they both are fighters, but their fighting styles are different. And they prefer different kind of fighting styles. Probably the sister is kind of okay with a long-term chronic fighting, And Raymond wants very quick fighting that gets resolved very quickly.
I think also the struggle, life struggles are different for everybody, no matter who you are. So even though they're brother and sister, they're going to look at, because this is life struggle, and they're going to look at the struggle and approach it from a different perspective, each on their own terms, and based on their backgrounds. So a woman who has 4 children, supports her husband, and he's at home, doesn't get much support from him. She basically has to stand on her own feet. And she also, his sister also notices the gender inequality that creeps into her business when, you know, she introduces her brother, you know, and you know, the women who are paying him these huge tips. So, you know, it's a very interesting, I find it very fascinating story. There's lots of little sub-themes that have crept in there, especially as Granta said, as we're talking our way through this.
Sorry, I had to step away for a second, but I wouldn't lay too much weight on the fact that it's been shortlisted for this prize or that prize. I think, like we spoke about, that is there's a lot of geopolitical aspects to that, getting selected for a prize, to getting shortlisted. I mean, all the way up. I mean, even to the Nobel, there's all sorts of other factors beyond pure literary merits. I guess so. That speech he gives to his sister, where he says, I'm happy to dream. I didn't like that part. That seemed a bit clunky to me, you know, for him to say it like that. But I did like what Alka pointed out, where he wants to see the sky and he can only see feet. And then I think my favorite line in the whole story was where he says that she felt how he looked. I think that was a good structure there. If you want, we can start the exercise a bit early today. Maybe give everyone 5 minutes extra. I think we've done talking about the story. So hold on. So I have 2 prompts. You can choose whichever prompt you want. What is miscalculated?
Yeah, miscalculated. There are the ebook version has 4,200 words and the online version is 3,200 words.
Yeah, I was surprised that you said the ebook version the online version had more, but anyway, that's fine. So, okay, so hold on. There's 2 prompts I scribbled down. One is that in relation to the story, imagining ourselves as an immigrant in another country and describe an incident that underlines the immigrant experience. Now, you can think of it as being an immigrant in a country where you're well off or where you're kind of lower on the ladder. That's one idea. The other one is that look around just the room you're sitting in and see an object, preferably not something conventional like a phone or an iPad or a tablet, but some kind of an object unique to your house, and come up with some kind of a small backstory for it. It doesn't have to be true, obviously. It should not be true, actually. Just pick one of these, write for about 10 minutes, and we can meet up at, it's only 4:28, so 4:45? Does that sound good? So I'm going to put these 2 prompts in the Zoom chat. So